Hi, I'm Paul, Springfield Speaker. Today we're going to work on fixing, repairing, reconing a T1 or T2 series Rockford Fosgate. We have a T2 here. This is a core for a T2. Serial number 50110. This one is black, has a black spider. This is factory original Rockford OEM stuff. Some of the subs have a red spider. That just means that's the version that's made in China. This one is actually made in the USA prior to Rockford moving to China. So we've got this for the T2. That fits the 10, the 12, and the 15 inch. We've also got versions for the T1. This is for the 12 inch and the 15 inch T1. And this is a factory original Rockford cone for that very same thing. You can make your very own drop-in kits ready to go. We also have it for the 10 inch version. Here's the 10 inch. We've got factory-made OEM cores. We were actually fortunate enough to do a buyout of all the last remaining American-made Rockford parts. So the one we're going to fix here today is this right here. You want to come in here. This is a Rockford Fosgate T2 D412. It's a big old pig of a subwoofer. Very popular, very expensive. I think these are $700 or $800, so it's definitely worth fixing. The parts that we use, the kit that you order from us on our website or eBay or Amazon, they're $69.95, including shipping within the U.S. A little extra if you're outside the country. Comes with the core itself, which is both spiders, spacer ring, your lead wires, all pre-assembled with your coil pre-glued inside, ready to go. You're going to have some shims. They may be white, they may be clear. I happen to be using clear ones today, but it could go either way. These are your glues. You've got your solvent-based rubber glue. This is for the main assembly. This is CA glue and activator. They are for gluing the cone itself to the coil. Anything you glue to the coil, you want to use CA glue or epoxy, something like that. The activator spray just helps it cure a little faster. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Now I've done a little bit of pre-work on this, just prepping it to help it go a little smoother in the video, but I want to give you an idea of how we start out. We take a small chisel, like this one, and we're going to go right to the edge. Right to the edge and slowly pry. Now you're going to see it comes up very easy. It's because I've already detached the whole edge to make this process a little quicker for you guys. But this is how I did it. I go in with this narrow chisel and go right here, and you're going to carefully wiggle with a twisting motion back and forth just like this, and you're going to go all the way around. The whole time you need to be applying pressure down into this metal frame so that you don't damage the cone. See, generally when we do a recone, we replace everything. We put in a new cone, new dust cap, coil, spider, everything. But in this case, these cones are no longer available, so we've got to reuse it. And in your situation, you may want to reuse it too. You might order one of the T1 kits, and you can either order a cone or you can reuse your existing cone. But with this one, and with a T2 in particular, you have to reuse your cone. So we're in here and we're slowly working back and forth, and we're going to do this all the way around, and it's slowly taking it up, and you're constantly putting pressure down into the metal with your chisel, and you want to have your angled lip facing up with the flat side down so that you're scooping the whole time. You slowly work your way around. You get all the way around the sub. Once you've gotten all the way around, as you'll see I have here, have already done, it's going to come up like this. I'm going to be able to do this all the way around. What I usually do in this situation right here then, once I've gotten all the way around, I'll fold it up just like this. Now we've got access down inside. Take a razor knife. This is one of the tools that we're going to use. Let's just get a look here of the tools that we're going to use for this entire repair. We've got our chisels. We've got a little chisel, skinny chisel, and then a 1 inch chisel. We're going to need some wide masking tape. We can also use narrow masking tape. We can go either way with it. Definitely want a razor knife. Razor knives are invaluable anytime you're doing a speaker repair. So you can get these anywhere for $1.99. We use these super shears here for a lot of things when we're working, and I'll show you where we use it on this later on. This is a solder sucker. These are available on our website. We also have soldering iron, variable heat soldering iron. These are available on our website. We've got solder on our website, SpringfieldSpeakerRepair.com. And then you're going to want some good stout needle nose. a hair dryer, you know, grab your wife or your mom's old hair dryer that they're not using anymore. Make sure you get permission, and you're going to use it later on in this repair. We've got clamps, which we'll use later on. Obviously our shims, our different adhesives, and the parts themselves. Okay, so now back to the repair. We are going to take our razor knife, extend that blade all the way out as far as you can, and get down in there. You've got two spiders to cut through. You've got a top spider and a bottom spider with a 1/2 inch spacer in between, so we've got to get through both of those. And you're going to go stab down into there and slowly cut your way around. Cut all the way around. You're stabbing all the way down through both spiders. You're not going to hurt anything. It's okay. Your blade is going to cut through the lead wires, but that's okay because our new parts do have new lead wires on them. So we'll get all the way around the sub. Doing this, every once in a while those lead wires will hang up. Make it a little tougher for you. And when we get all the way to the end, we can then lift it out. Now there's our core. Here's our old guts that we're going to replace with our new ones. Again, these are red spiders. This is the Chinese version of the Rockford Fosgate T2. Ours have the black spider. This is the American version. They're the same parts, just assembled in a different country. These are, in my opinion, these are the good ones. So we're going to take that. We're going to set it aside. Okay, so. First things first, we'll tip this big old bad boy up. We're going to take this right here. This is our very tiny chisel. I think this is about a 1/4 inch chisel. And right here we have to get our contact covers off. These are our binding posts for this sub. Obviously there's 2 sets since it is a dual voice coil. And we've got to get up under here. And you'll see, I don't know if you can get in there and see that. Can you see that little, you'll see a little design right there. It's like a seam. That seam is actually where this part is snapped to this part. So we've got to get up under that edge with our little tiny chisel and just pop it a little bit and kind of lift at the same time. It'll make a little snapping sound. Don't panic, it's not breaking. We're going to do that and get it off of there. There we go. So we take that. We're going to set it to the side with our cone. Turn it around. Do the other side. Find that little lip. A little tricky to get under it. Alright, so there we've got that off. Now our contacts are exposed. This is good. This is just one of the steps that we have to do. We have to make sure that we get all of the old parts out of here so we've got a nice clean frame to work with. I'm going to take my super shears and I'm going to cut these lead wires right here. Do it on both of them. You can use tin snips, anything you can get through there. I like these because they're long, and because the blade is short and at the very end it's got a lot of leverage. I don't have to squeeze that hard. Tin snips work very well. Anything that's really sharp that you can get a lot of leverage with is good for cutting these. Now we're going to get in here with our soldering iron. If you have this, which is good, this is a little compound that you dip it down into. If you can do that, it's going to clean it and tin your tip before you start. Get your solder sucker ready. If you've got that tinning bubbling on there, it's going to melt this solder a lot easier. The whole point is we need to get in here, get this solder to melt, have our solder sucker ready to go. Golly, that's not something that wants to melt very easily right there. Looks like it's coming now. Do it again. There we go. That piece of lead wire has come off. Now we're going to get the other one here. Get it melted. Get it nice and hot. Get our solder sucker in there. And there we go. Now it's clean. You're going to repeat that on the other side, and then you'll be off to the races. Okay, now I actually made a little mistake here. I do have my solder all taken off, and my lead wires are gone, so I've got nice clean contacts to work with. However, before I ever did that, as soon as I pulled the cone out, I should have done this. Very first step, And I got a little bit ahead of myself. The very first step is to rip off a big old piece of tape and fold it into a football, a nice triangle like this. Make sure you're doing this with the sticky side out, okay, because this is going to be a valuable tool for you to use here. Take that and just stick it to the side for a second. There's another tool that I didn't mention earlier that we need to have, and that is air gun. We need an air gun with some compressed air. You don't need it, but it's very handy. And what we're actually doing is blowing out our gap. This is our gap. This is the area that the coil goes down into right here. And we need to make sure we get it clear of all debris. So we can blow it out. We can use our football. Come on in here and I'll show you. We'll tuck it right down in there. I'm going to try and make it as thin as we can so it's easy to work with. Going with one long point first and get it all the way to the bottom of the gap and slowly work it around. The point is you're trying to clean off the side of the pole piece and the inside of your top plate and magnet that's down in there. So we're cleaning that gap out. As we get around, we're going to be able to check and see if there's any debris on it. This one's actually not too bad. This sub wasn't actually blown. It had another little internal problem, and the owner chose to have us go ahead and rebuild it. So that's what we're going to do. We can make another football. Just rip off a piece. You know, you can use some folding tricks to make your football a little bigger, a little longer. I've got a little bit bigger football this time around. It's going to be able to reach all the way to the bottom of that gap. So again, we're going to get down in there, get all the way down to the bottom of the gap with it. You can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and clean this out here just in the interest of time. Take my compressed air or vacuum cleaner. You can use either one, but compressed air is what we use. Give it one more blow just to make sure it's good and cleaned out. Okay, now that we've got our gap all cleaned out, we need to get our masking tape out again. Rip off some nice long strips. This particular sub has a 4-inch coil, so we've got to be able to get all the way across there. And I'll show you what we're doing. Basically, we're going to tape this up and seal it all down. And we're going to do this all the way around so we get the whole gap protected to keep any debris from falling down into this gap while we're working on the sub, while we're cleaning up all the old surround residue and the old glue residue, removing the old spiders. That's all going to make a big mess. So what we're trying to avoid is getting anything down in that gap. So I'm going to tape this up real quick and then kind of show you what we've got as an end result. It's not a fashion show. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be effective. As long as it's effective, that's all that matters. So, get it all sealed all the way around, and you can see it's ugly as can be, but it's effective. We're sealed all the way around here, and we're sealed all the way across the top. Now, nothing's going to get down in our gap. So we can move on to the next step. We need to take our chisel, our bigger one, slowly, quickly, however you want, work your way around this frame. What we're doing is cleaning off all that old residue from the little bit of the surround that did come off and that old adhesive that's on there. Try and get this clean. Now some people will take it an extra step and they'll sand it down maybe with a Dremel tool or a sander of some kind. Now that's not necessarily, well, it's not necessarily necessary, but it can be handy. If you get it clean, the cleaner it is, the better. We don't really need to take that step. We're just going to get it nice and clean nice and smooth and get all of the old pieces of rubber off of there. Okay, now we've got the edge of the frame all cleaned off. We're ready to go. It's clean, smooth, ready to be glued to. Now we've got to get our old core out of there. Now this is a little tricky on these T-series. You actually have to get in there and break the old one out. Tear up your old spiders, break them. You're not going to get them out in one piece. At least not any method that we've found yet are you going to get them out in one piece. And another thing, you cannot use a hammer. If you use a hammer on a speaker, it's very, very bad. If you throw the magnetic field off on your magnet, your subwoofer could end up sounding like a tweeter. So we don't want to whack it with anything that could throw off the magnetic field. So it can be a little tricky. We're just going to work at this a little bit and get some of this to break out of there. There we go. A little bit of brute force. If you can get it to break in the first place, it might be a good idea to wear safety glasses here. If you can get it to break out in the first place and start, then you've got something to help get you moving along the way. I can get under here with my little chisel right now. Aha! If we do this, we can slowly get this thing to come. Now these Rockfords are pretty tough subwoofers, so it's no small feat getting this thing apart. It's not meant to be easy, so it's going to take a little bit of muscle, a little bit of work, and you're going to be able to get this out of here. I've gotten one section out. Got to move on a little bit more. Once we can get that first section out, then we've got somewhere where we can start coming in at an angle and working a little leverage. I'm kind of pulling up on this spider a little bit as I go. Maybe I can come in at this angle and get a little bit of leverage on it. Yeah, see, we've got a whole seam. See this here? This is a whole seam of the old CA glue that went down the sides of the insert when they glued it in place from the factory. So we're going to have to get all this out of here. So I'm going to work at this a little bit, and you'll catch back up with me in just a few minutes. Okay, I've gotten most of this cleaned up. Our edge is cleaned up for the most part, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Dremel tool. I didn't have this in the tools that we would need in the beginning. You don't always need it, but on the case of this one in particular, the glue was pretty intense on here, so I'm going to take a Dremel tool with a little sanding drum, and I'm going to clean this edge, clean it all up, get the old spider off of there and all the old glue off of there. So we're just going to... You can see how we're getting that cleaned out in there, and that's really what we need so that we've got something good for our new adhesive to stick to. So I'm going to finish this up, and you can rejoin me in just a few minutes. Okay, as you probably know, or may be able to guess, anytime you use a Dremel tool, it's going to make a heck of a mess. So I've come back and I've vacuumed up all our mess, wiped everything down, and now we've got a nice clean frame to work with. By clean, I just mean all the residue is gone. There's no adhesive or chunks of anything left on it. So it's ready to be rebuilt. So we're going to set this aside and move on to our next step. What we've got to do now is take our core that we cut out originally. Okay, we've got to get this dust cap off of here because this cone and dust cap are no longer available. So what we need to do is try and get these apart as carefully as possible so we can reuse them. Now this is an aluminum cone with an aluminum dust cap, so the biggest problem working with aluminum is that it'll kink, it'll bend. If you try and peel this off of here, it's going to completely misshape it, and you're never going to get it back to the right shape in order to put it back. So here's what we do. We'll take and we'll stick our hand way up in there as best we can, and basically my finger is right up in here now. I'm going to actually do it with the other hand so my watch doesn't get in the way. And I've got, there we go, I've got it on my hand, and my finger is wedged way up in here right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a place to start, make sure our cone's nice, and we're going to take our hair dryer on high. Don't use a heat gun for this. If you use a heat gun, you're going to ruin your surround, you're going to warp everything, and you're going to destroy your chances of rebuilding this sub properly. But a hair dryer will get nice and warm without damaging heat. So we're going to run a hair dryer on high, and we're just going to heat this area. Just work with maybe 5 or 6 inches at a time and get it warm. And then what we're going to do is our finger is in there, and we're slowly going to push that finger and wedge it. Wedge it, push it out toward the edge up inside there. Once this gets nice and hot, and it's going to get a little warm on your fingers, but it's not going to hurt you too badly. And you're going to slowly separate them. And what it's going to do is it's going to bubble this a little bit. So we only do a little bit at a time. We push out to the edge when it's nice and warm, and then we're going to come back with our thumb and smooth this back out. And then we're going to move over just a little bit, rotate it a little, and do the same thing. So here, I'm going to get it started on high. We're just going to get it nice and hot. Okay, now I got an area nice and warm, and watch what happens. Watch it. It's going to bubble out a little bit. See the bubble out right there? But I'm able to separate it from the surround. There we go, from the cone. Now, but before I move on, I'm going to take this thumb, smooth that back out, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and I'm going to push it over to here. Smooth that out with my thumb. Rotate a little bit more. Try and get it separated. It's starting to cool. So now I've got to heat it up again. Now this is a lengthy process. This is probably going to take a solid 10 minutes to get this all off of here. So I'm not going to show you the whole thing all the way around, or you're going to be bored out of your mind before we get to the next step. You get it to separate, smooth it out, smooth it out. I'm going to continue to work this, and you can catch up with me when I've got it all disconnected like this is right here. Okay? Remember, you're gonna heat it up, separate it, and then smooth this back out. Otherwise, so you don't destroy or warp this dust cap. So I'm going to get back to this. Okay, now once you've got it started, and you can see where I've gotten, a little over halfway maybe around here, and I'm safely taking this off. And yeah, we're getting some dimples. We're making a few marks in this, but here's the problem. It's an aluminum dust cap. There's not really much we can do about that. We're going to make it as pretty as we can in the end, but the point is we're going to have a sub that returns to its former glory and thumps like crazy. So once you get to this point where you can actually get under there with something, you don't want to get and pull on it, because you're gonna make divots all the way around. But what you can do is take something like this. It's just a little hook, and you can carefully slip it in there in between and get around and just kind of along the edge there. We're just trying to separate it. We get to where it's not going to go any further, and then we can heat it up some more. Okay, so we get that heated up, and then we can carefully, very carefully run that along there. Remember, we're not trying to pull out, we're trying to slide between. So all we're trying to do is slide between the two. Make a little bit of progress, and then move on. See, now that is now separated. We were able to break that little bead of rubber adhesive that's in there. So we're just going to keep doing that. Heat up more, stick the hook in, slide it a couple more inches, heat it up more, and so on all the way around. So I'll finish this off real quick. Okay, now we've just finished up. We've gotten this off of here, okay? Everything's pretty clean. We've actually got some pretty clean rubber. This is good because we need to reuse this and this. So we've got our dust cap, got some little wrinkles in it, but for the most part we've managed to maintain our shape, so we're going to be able to reuse this, and that's good. And we can keep that original Rockford Fosgate T2 look there that people want to keep. That's a pretty cool looking sub. So next we're going to come around here. We're going to look inside our former till we find the seam in our former, and we're going to go and we're going to cut with our super shears right down that seam. A little tough because this is a lot of metal we're cutting through, and this is why you want some good tin snips or really good strong sharp shears to work with. Okay, so we got through there. Now what we've done is we've cut all along our seam. We're going to finish off the rest of it with a razor knife here. Be very careful that you don't take out your finger or have it slip out and stab you. You don't want that. But now is the tricky part. Well, we'll get these off here first. Cut through our spiders right up to the cone. We'll peel these off as best we can. Get them out of the way. Now this whole time you got to be careful. This is an aluminum cone. On the T2 this is an aluminum cone, whereas on the T1 it's a it's a pulp cone reinfused with Kevlar. So this one in particular, if you warp it or bend it, it's going to stay that way, and you're going to have a nightmare to contend with later. So we'll come through here, cut our leads, rip it the rest of the way. Whew, lose a grip on it there. Sometimes you got to make another cut. Cut the lead. Love these shears. This is actually pretty good here. We don't have to get it all off. We're not looking to clean our coil. But we're looking to get this out of the way. So now we take our super duper needle nose, okay? We're going to grab right there along that seam and pinch up as high as we can. I'm going to grab it and we're going to twist it. Twist it. Do not muscle it, because you don't want to warp the cone in the process. All we're doing is we're twisting it and we're slowly peeling the former away from the inside diameter of the cone. Don't try to cut your glue or anything else like that. You need to very carefully work on this. Now, we're not having the best of luck here. It looks like we are, but upon closer analysis I can see that all we're doing is we're tearing the former. But this is okay. We can still get this out of here. Try starting that. Cut that a little bit. And be careful, you're working with sharp aluminum here. You can cut yourself. I've got a little cut there on my finger. Again, make sure you don't have a grip on the cone. There, now it's coming. See it peeling away from the inside of the cone right here? That's what we want, what we need it to do. Move very carefully here. And you unwind a little bit, and you can get your pliers out and move on a little closer. pinch. Do some more twisting. The whole point is to peel that former away from the cone because it's going to make it easier to work with later. Get all this garbage out of here. Cut some off so we can get a fresh twist. Just discard that. Get that off of there and out of our way. Make it a little easier to twist. Get some of our old coil out of there. A little less to contend with. Get back in there and go right back at it. Key here, again, to get the former, as it's doing here, to peel away from the inside diameter of the cone. Get to a stopping point. Cut it again. Actually, I can get this out of here. It's going to make things a lot easier. Get that coil out of there. Obviously you're going to destroy the coil doing this, but that's okay because we've got a new one. What we don't have is a new cone. See that? Because we came at it the other way, when I told you not to panic about where we tore the former, we were able to remove all the former. So now we need to come in here. We're going to use a Dremel tool and we're going to clean this up. Okay, so we've got our Dremel tool, safety glasses, and we're going to grind all this off of here and get it all cleaned up. See, now we've got a little bit of metal exposed here. That means when we've got this metal exposed, it means that we've gotten to the cone itself. This is an aluminum cone once again. So we're going to do that, and we're going to go till we've got an aluminum lip exposed all the way around, very gently. Here's the cool thing about doing it this way. When we get to a certain point and we get the last of the glue off the bottom to expose the lip, this is what should happen here. That's the CA glue that this was assembled with. Now, we've got a cone that, yes, it needs to be cleaned off before we can work with it, but it's ready to reassemble as a recone kit. So I'm going to clean up this mess and we'll come back in just a minute. Okay, we're back. We've got our cone all cleaned up, ready to work with. We've dusted off our workspace. It's really important to keep your workspace clean when you're working on a speaker because you don't want any debris to get down into your gap. That's by far the most important thing to worry about through this entire process. So now that we've got our cone nice and clean, we're going to test fit it down onto our kit. And look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's perfect. So I'm going to take and set this aside, and set this aside. We're going to get our speaker back in. Ugh. This is a big girl. Carefully peel our tape and throw it away. Now, once again, here we come back with our football one more time. Going to make a nice big football. Again, this all goes back to keeping your workspace clean. Cleaning the gap is very important, especially in something like this. You know, this is not a speaker that's easy to rebuild like a lot of stuff you might get. You know, most PA speakers and home audio speakers are pretty easy to rebuild. These are very involved, they're very tough, they're not made to be rebuilt, but you know, several of us have figured out how to do it and do it nicely. So we'll run this, get this down in there again. Clean our gap a little bit. See that there's a little bit there. We'll grab our air compressor one more time. Blow it out. So we're good here. One more time around. I'm going to grab a flashlight and just kind of look down in here. Make sure that there's nothing apparent down in the gap that we're missing. Just give it a good once over, look down in there, see if you can see all the sides and the bottom, and make sure there's no debris left in there. This one looks pretty good. So we'll put our flashlight away, and then it's time to test fit our drop in. So we take our core, set it right down in, and look at that. She's beautiful. Perfect. Factory fit OEM stuff we're working with here. Our leads clip right down in there very nicely. Looks like we're in good shape. We can do a test fit now. Grab our cone. We can do all this dry before we put any glue on, just to make sure everything's going to fit properly when it's all said and done. Looks to me like this is perfect. So take it back apart, and then we need to prep to begin gluing. Alright, we are going to take this. We've already test fitted it, so now we get our adhesive. Here we're going to use the black. This is a solvent based rubber. It's got toluene, hexane, acetone, and what we're going to do is we're going to place it all around on this lip right here and a little bit on the wall. So I've got my turntable here. It makes it a little easier to apply a nice even bead. I'm going to apply that bead all the way around, nice and big. I don't usually use a brush. A lot of our kits come with brushes, but we don't use them. We only include those because some people expect to have them. We actually use the tip of our bottle, kind of like you did in grade school, using the tip of your bottle of Elmer's glue to spread your glue on the paper. That's what we do here. We use the tip of our bottle to spread the glue out nice and evenly. Squeeze here and there till we get a nice good coverage the way we need it to go. We get a little bit down this wall here. Make sure we've got that all the way around. Now, we're going to take some, we're going to put it, you know what, we're going to do one other thing real quick while that's airing out. We're going to take a piece of sandpaper and we're just going to rough this edge up a little bit. We do this with a lot of stuff with these subwoofers because it's sometimes hard to get things to stick really well. So if we just do this to scratch them up a little bit of abrasion is going to go a long way to helping our adhesive to bond properly. Here, we're going to put a bead all the way around this. Don't have to put it where the wires are, because as you can see here, there's no wall there. So we can stop short of the wires when we come around putting this on. Alright. Put the bottle on our glue. This glue is wicked and it'll dry out very quickly, so you need to make sure and cap it every time you're not using it. Now we're going to gently set this down in here. Line up your wires and don't, just gently lay it in there. We're not going to push it down into the glue yet, because we need to put our shims in place. We'll get our shims down in there. You'll see where the shims go in between the coil and the pole piece. If you've ever repaired a speaker before, you'll probably be familiar with this process. These are pretty thick shims. Looks like we're only going to need one layer to do this properly. Okay. Alright, all the shims are in there, so our voice coil is now centered in the gap, and we can press this down. Press it down into that glue. Our wires are lined up nicely. We can press those down into their little grooves. Do that on both sides. Press this down some more. I usually like to then take this, and you're going to see right here there's a little gap between the wall and the edge of this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to press this hard against that and squirt down into that groove, down into there, and fill that up the rest of the way. Stop when you get to the wires. So we're pressing it and squeezing it. It'll settle down into there and complete the adhesion along there, but we're squirting a lot of adhesive down into there. Alright, there we go. Got a good bead. Can go around one more time. Don't worry about this looking too sloppy with that little bead of glue right there, because if you'll remember from when you first took it apart, it was just as sloppy or sloppier already. The factory slopped it in there just like we do. That's how we make sure that it's right. Now we're going to take a couple clamps. We've got these plastic welding clamps here. I'm going to find a way to, there we go. If you flip one of those down, we can clamp that right down on the edge there. Flip it down. And you can see we're getting under this lip here with one side, and then the vertical side is going to pinch right down on there without getting in the glue. That way it's clamping down hard, and it's going to hold that in place while it's curing. See if we can get a little more grip here. Tough to get a clamp to grab right there. Here we go. We're going to let that set, and we're going to move on to another step. So we're going to take this, let it dry a little bit. You know what? We need a little bit more glue in here. Make sure you save a little bit of this glue in the end, because that's what you're going to use to glue your rubber surround of your cone back down to this frame, is this glue right here. There's enough in there to do the entire job, so don't sweat that. I'm going to take this and we're just going to slide it to the side, get our cone back out, and we're going to start prepping this for the next step. Okay, take our sandpaper. This is 150 grit. It's, you know, just something to rough up our cone. Basically, we've got our aluminum cone. You saw that was CA glue, which is like among the strongest glue there is. That was an epoxy type glue, and you saw how easy it popped out of there once we broke through here with our Dremel tool. That didn't really stick to this inside, so we're going to try and do it a little bit better than Rockford did the first time around. We're going to take our sandpaper, and you can see about where your glue line was before. I'm going to scuff this up really good. Go all the way around here. And we're going to give our adhesive a way to get some good traction so it doesn't let loose on us when you're thumping away in your car. Don't cut your finger on the edge of this cone. Make sure you're just pressing with a thumb or just one thing at a time here so you don't get carried away and hurt yourself. You don't want another slice like I have there. Okay, it looks like we've got a pretty good scuff going around here. That can be deceiving sometimes, so we're going to take a paper towel and we're going to clean it up a little bit. I usually use a paper towel rather than a terry cloth, like a hand towel, because the hand towel has all the little strings on it. They get caught on sharp edges and then they're kind of stuck and they're making a mess in where you're trying to work. And so paper towel works a little bit better for that sometimes. Yeah, still need a little bit more scuffing. It's okay to overdo this because it's very important to make sure that it's right. If you don't scuff it enough, your sub's going to come apart. If you scuff it too much, big deal, you scuffed it too much. So it's okay to over scuff. Alright, looking pretty nice. Okay, now that we've done this, we can come in again, bring our sub back over, and we can do a test fit. Looks like everything's going to line up nicely. Looks really nice. Alright, we're going to take a little break. We're going to let this dry. Let this glue in here set up for, 15-20 minutes before we come back to it. Alright? Okay, we're back. We've let this thing sit and cure for 15-20 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes. Now we're going to remove these two clamps that are over the lead wires. Basically, I'm going to come in here and make sure the lead wires are clipped right down in those little clips. I've got one here that I need to clean up a little better. Grab my solder sucker. Didn't get as clean as it was supposed to the first time. So we stick these right down in those little clips. Now, gonna get it hot. Make sure to tin your iron a little bit. Get a little bit of solder on there. Now we're gonna get this nice and hot here. You're gonna see bubbles coming out of your tinsel leads. That's ideal. But you're not just touching your tinsel lead. You're touching the tinsel lead and the clip that it's going down into at the same time, because you need both of them to be equally hot for the solder joint to be effective. Get it nice and hot. Start applying your solder. These are thirsty. Tuck the other one down in. Get it nice and hot. That's going to be easier to tuck when you get it hot too. Everything's going to soften up a little bit. Alright. We got those. Now we're going to repeat it on the other side and we'll be right back. Okay, so now we got both sides soldered. Take the old super shears. We're going to snip those off of there. Snip the little tag ends off. Remember our little caps that we took off in the very beginning? We've got those here. They go on very specific way. This little lip here fits into this groove, so we've got to get that started on there. Snapped in the right way, and those are in place. Do the other one. And there it is. That one's ready to go. Now we're ready to move on to our cone. So we've got our cone. It's ready to go. It's already scuffed up. We need to take our sandpaper. We're going to take and we're going to scuff up the edge of this cone. Now we don't usually use sandpaper here in the shop. We actually use one of these drywall sanding sponges. It works very well. Anytime you're gluing rubber, you really need to give it some abrasion, some scuff before you put glue to it. That way the glue is really going to take well. Don't got to do a lot. You can see the difference here where we're scuffing it up versus where it is there. And we're just going to scuff it up all the way around. Clean it up good. Make it nice and rough. Okay. Might even grab our air compressor, blow it off a little bit. So now we're ready to go with that, right? Looks good. Test fit one last time. It looks like it's going to be great. So we come back, set this to the side, get out our super duper black glue again one time, and we're just going to take and we're going to put a bead of it all the way around here. I like to do a zigzag because it gives make sure we get a good coverage on the first lap. You don't have to overdo it. This stuff is wicked strong, and the more you do, the longer it takes to cure. Now when we get this whole thing together, we're going to have to let it sit for 36 to 48 hours before we thump it too hard. You know, in 24 you can play it really lightly, but keep in mind this is essentially a brand new sub, so you're going to have to go through a full break-in period as instructed. You know, when you buy a new sub, you're going to have to do that with this one. You know, let this dry a little bit, let it start to breathe, and let some of it evaporate, because the way this adhesive works is it's basically just bits of rubber dissolved in all those chemicals. That solvent that I mentioned earlier, the toluene, hexane, and acetone, those are all chemicals that evaporate at room temperature and when exposed to air. So we get it on here, we let it start to breathe, let the chemicals start to evaporate, and in the end you've got something that is etched into the surfaces by the chemicals, and once the chemicals evaporate, you're left with pure rubber that is etched into both surfaces. So it makes excellent contact, excellent sealing, excellent adhesion. This is not something you have to do, but it's something we like to do sometimes. We then go to our scuffed rubber surface. We're going to put a little bead on here, kind of like using it like a contact cement. Now with a foam surround, you don't do this. If this surround were made of foam, we would not do that. But with rubber, we sometimes like to go that extra mile just to make sure that it's going to stick. This is one of those subs where there's not a lot of centering to do. Everything is perfect already. This is going to drop right down into a groove and be perfect, so we don't have to worry about a lot of adjustment after we've glued it down. So we're going to do this, and we're going to let this sit for, you know, 30 seconds, maybe blow on it a little bit. Kind of let it air out a little bit, let some of that start to evaporate. Now this here, if you look here, I just barely touch it. It's When it starts to get gooey is when it's really good. It's starting to get a little gooey, kind of stringy there. That's not the greatest yet. We're going to give it another 20 seconds or so to breathe, because it's just getting to the point where it's ready to really stick. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick this rubber to this rubber, and that's going to bring the whole thing together in the end. Let it set up a little bit here. Alright, now we're going to take this, set it right down on the way it goes. You can see we're nice and even all the way around. Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm excited. This is an awesome sub. This thing's going to hit really hard. It's going to hit just like it did from the factory when it's all done, and it's going to look just like it did from the factory. Get this all pressed in. Get some more clamps ready. Now you can see here on this edge, I got a little glue on my hand. You can see here on this edge that this rubber really wants to come out to this outside edge, and that's really where we want it to go. That's where it was initially. It doesn't have to be tight to the outside edge, but it's got to be pretty close. Because if you'll remember in the beginning, it wasn't really easy to get our chisel in between there to get it off. So we want to try and match the way the factory did it in the beginning. Now again, we're going to take with our little clamp, and we're going to turn one side vertical. We can push out a little bit, and there it is. It's clamped in place. Now from there, we're going to go 180 degrees across. Do the same thing. And go 90 degrees from there. And straight across from there. Fill in the gaps all the way around at the 45-degree markers. Alright, our surround is clamped down really nice. You know what, we can even add a few extras here just to make sure we get the whole thing covered. There we go. Couldn't figure out why that wasn't sitting right. This one's doing the same thing. Slide this over. Another. Let me get a couple more here. Slide this over. Whoop. Glad we caught that on video. And then, okay, clean up our mess a little bit. Be careful not to drop anything down in here while all this is going on, while you're doing all this work, because if it gets down in that coil gap, you're already glued together now. Your glue is starting to dry. It's going to be a nightmare to get this thing back apart, and you may end up destroying the kit that you just paid 70 bucks for in order to get it apart and have to redo it again. So we're going to let this set up for a while, and while this is curing, make sure we're clean here. We're ready to go. We'll take our dust cap. We're going to lay it in place, and we're going to let this thing sit for, I'd say probably another half hour before we move on too much. So we'll take a little break and we'll be right back. Okay, it's time to glue our cone to our coil and do the big joint in the middle. We're going to use our CA glue and our activator. Shake up our CA a little bit. Pop the cap off our activator so it's ready to go. And do a spray off to the side. Pump it a couple times till it's ready to spray so you're ready to go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our CA right in this joint here, in between the coil and the cone, and we're basically going to fill up that little valley right there. I'm gonna do a good bead here. You'll remember we scuffed our cone to make sure that it grabs really good for us. Get that valley nice and full. Look down below, see if we're bleeding down through. Couple sprays down below. And all we're doing is we're spraying the joint where the cone meets the spider down in there. I'll come right up here. We're gonna it doesn't want to spray very well. There we go. We'll let that start to harden. We don't want to use too much of the spray. If we use too much of the spray, it's going to get a really weird crinkly finish to it, and that crinkly finish is not good. It's not a good strong bond. We need it to be strong, so we want it to be smooth. It's going to start to crystallize a little bit, and then we'll come over the top, do one more application of this to make sure we get it good. Looks pretty smooth now. So we've got a good bead of CA, and this joint is very important. This is what holds the whole sub together, and this obviously is the reason that when we do a recone, we usually have to get a new cone, because it can be very difficult to salvage a cone in order to do a repair. Do that, and then we're just, this one time we're just gonna, just a light dusting, let that start to crystallize, and then we're gonna let it sit. Put our cap back on our glue so it doesn't dry out, and we've got some left over for later. There's actually quite a bit that comes in the kit, more than enough. So we're gonna let this sit for probably another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so we've got this, we've let it set up for a little while. Now we're gonna come back, we're gonna get our dust cap ready. There's our dust cap that we got from earlier. Now it has a little bit of adhesive left on it. Now this is the solvent-based rubber adhesive. It's okay if you leave a little bit of that on there. It's not going to hurt anything. Anywhere where metal is exposed, I'm going to scuff that up a little bit, like we did earlier with the cone. Just get a little bit of scuffing going around that edge. And don't do this over the speaker. You want to do this off to the side. If you do it over the speaker, you can get stuff down in there. Again, we don't want to do that. So let's just rough this up a little bit, anywhere where metal is showing. Okay, we've got this very nice. I actually use my shirt, I'm a little messy sometimes. Dust it off. Okay, set that to the side. Get out our tape. Break off another piece. We're not going to make a football. We're just going to, basically we're going to make a handle. Take this and stick it right in the middle of our dust cap. Stick it in there pretty good. And now, fold it in half, like that. We've got a handle. So, come back with our black glue. And we can put a very light bead, very, very tiny bead, near the very inside edge of this rubber surround. Don't put it up against the roll, and don't put it down on the cone. Put it on the very inside edge of that rubber surround on that inner lip. We're just going to let that set up a little bit. Once we get it all on there, this is where a turntable comes in very handy when you're working on a speaker. We do everything on a turntable here. A lot of shops don't use turntables. We just find it very easy because the speaker rotates very, very smoothly. Now we're going to go back away from over our voice coil. We don't want to get any glue down in there any more than we want to get any debris down in there. We'll take the tip of our bottle, use the last bit of our glue here to get it on the edge of our dust cap. Alright, set our glue to the side, put the cap on again. Now, grab it by the handle. Basically, we just want to let this thing breathe for, I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a little more. Okay, so now we've kind of let this breathe a little bit. I made a little bit of a mess, as I often do. This glue is really sloppy. You got to be very careful. It makes a big mess. The last thing we're going to do before we slip our dust cap on is we're going to reach down in here, and we've got to get all of our shims out of this speaker. Make sure you get all of them out. If you leave a shim down in there, you're going to have a very bad noise that you don't like coming out of your sub when you're playing it. Okay, so now we're ready. Our shims are out. The sub moves great in and out. There's no rub. We know there's not going to be a rub because we glued everything and allowed the glue to dry with shims in place. That pretty much guarantees that we're not going to have an issue. Now we're going to take and put our dust cap down in. Make sure we get it nice and centered. Nice and even all the way around. Once we've got it where it looks good, hold it down, pull your tape out, grab the roll of tape, set it on there. What that's going to do is it's going to keep even pressure on the dust cap all the way around. I'm going to use this speaker here. You can use a speaker, you can use just about anything, anything maybe a pound and a half on a big sub like this. This is about a 1.5 pound speaker. We're going to set it right on there, and what that's going to do is it's going to weight that dust cap down, give that all that adhesive time to cure, time to dry. So when everything's done, we've got a nice thumping sub. It sounds great. It looks great. You can clean up a little bit of this extra glue mess while you're waiting for it to cure. You're going to have to do that kind of quickly, but now that's pretty much it. Our repair is done. We're just going to let it sit for 36 hours probably before we do anything further with it. We'll leave it right here. We'll come back, pull it out, pop it in the box, and enjoy the sound. I think this customer is going to be pretty happy because he really liked the sub and asked us if there was any way we could salvage this dust cap. So basically what we did is we figured it out. We've shown you how to do it as well today. I'm Paul with Springfield Speaker. If you have any questions, you can call us anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time at 800-397-9575. You can visit us online at springfieldspeakerrepair.com. And thanks.